The nights had grown colder, not because of the weather outside, but because of the silence within Elena's home. She often found herself staring at the clock long past midnight, waiting for the sound of Damien's keys in the door, waiting for the man she once believed could never leave her lonely. But Damien's life had become consumed by work-late meetings, endless travel, and a distance that stretched far beyond miles. He still called her love when he remembered, but the warmth was gone, replaced by routine, by obligation. Elena had always been proud of her marriage. People saw them as the perfect couple, attractive, successful, always smiling at parties. Yet beneath the surface, she carried the heavy weight of invisibility. She tried to reach for him in the quiet hours of the night, but Damien always turned away, his body more familiar with exhaustion than with her touch. And then there was Kai. He was Damien's closest friend, someone who had always been around in their lives, but never quite this much. Lately, Kai had started visiting more often, checking in when Damien was away, helping with little tasks around the house, lingering a bit longer after dinners. At first, Elena dismissed it as kindness, nothing more. But the truth was, she noticed things about Kai she had never allowed herself to before. He had a way of looking at her, not with distraction or impatience, but with focus, like she was the only person in the room. He complimented her when she changed her hair, noticed the perfume she wore, and even laughed at her smallest jokes. They weren't grand gestures, but they were the kinds of details she starved for. One evening, she found herself in the kitchen, pouring wine while Kai leaned against the counter. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing arms sculpted from years of labor and gym hours, and his presence filled the space in a way Damien's never had. He asked her about her day, really asked, and when she sighed about the emptiness of it all, he listened. Not with half-hearted nods, but with silence, eyes locked on hers, inviting her to spill truths she hadn't dared to admit aloud. Their laughter echoed louder than it should have. Each smile lingered a moment too long. Each accidental brush of fingers passing a glass, reaching for the same plate, left a tingling trace on her skin. Elena told herself it was harmless. People could be kind. People could care. But why did her heart race every time he leaned a little closer? Why did her lips tremble when he teased her gently, his voice low, intimate, as if his words were meant only for her? She tried to avoid him after that evening. She told herself she had to be careful, that she was imagining things. But the more she tried, the more her thoughts betrayed her. She caught herself replaying moments in her head, the way he had touched her arm when she laughed too hard, the way his eyes scanned her face when she looked away. The guilt grew heavy, but alongside it was a craving she couldn't suppress. For once, she felt seen. Damien remained absent, caught up in his endless cycle of obligations. When he did come home, he was exhausted, too tired for conversation, too tired for love. Elena couldn't bring herself to blame him fully. Life was hard, and marriage was harder, but that didn't make the loneliness any less crushing. It was during one of those nights, when Damien was away on another business trip, that Kai came by. He had offered to drop something off for Damien, but he stayed. They shared dinner at the small dining table, laughter flowing easily again. Elena noticed the way his gaze lingered on her lips as she spoke. Her pulse quickened. She bit her lip, nervously trying to ignore the storm rising inside her. After dinner, they moved to the living room. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that amplifies everything, the sound of his breath, the clink of glass against the table, the weight of silence between words. Kai shifted closer. Not much, but enough that Elena could feel the heat radiating from him. Her chest tightened. She told herself to stand, to excuse herself, to end the evening before it became something dangerous. But she didn't move. When she finally looked up, his eyes were locked on hers, steady and unblinking. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air grew heavier, pressing against her chest. She could hear her own heartbeat, loud and reckless. Lips parted slightly, not in words, but in hesitation. She should have looked away, she should have ended it. But instead, she stayed there frozen, breath shallow, waiting to see what he would do. And in that moment, Elena realized the truth. She had been avoiding. She wasn't just lonely. She was tempted. The clock ticked in the background, marking the moment she silently crossed the first line she could never uncross. Asterisk. The next morning, Elena stood at the kitchen sink, her fingers absently tracing the rim of her coffee cup as if it could give her answers. The memory of the night before burned in her mind, the way Kai's eyes had locked onto hers, the way she had frozen, unable to turn away. Nothing had happened, not really. No words, no kiss. But something had shifted. She felt it in her chest like a secret she couldn't confess, not even to herself. She told herself to stay away from him. It was the only way to quiet the storm. Yet, as the hours stretched into days, she found her thoughts circling back to Kai, the way he listened, the way he filled the silence Damien had left behind. She hated herself for it, hated the way her heart sped up whenever her phone lit with his name, or whenever she wondered if he might drop by again. When he did, it was never planned. He'd come with an excuse, dropping off paperwork for Damien, asking if she needed help with groceries, sometimes nothing at all. Each time, Elena tried to keep her distance. She reminded herself of her vows, of the life she and Damien had built. But no amount of discipline could erase the ache in her chest when Kai leaned in close, or the warmth that lingered when his hand brushed against hers. One afternoon, she found herself on the porch with him. The air was thick with summer heat, and they sat in quiet conversation. Elena confessed, almost without realizing, that she often felt invisible in her own home. She spoke the words softly, as if releasing a secret she had carried too long. Kai didn't interrupt. He didn't dismiss her feelings or change the subject the way Damien might have. He just looked at her, eyes steady, and said, "You deserve to be seen, Elena." The way he said her name made her pulse flutter. She bit her lip, trying to hold the tremor in her chest, but the words clung to her, seeping into places Damien's voice hadn't reached in years. That night, the rain came. Heavy drops battered the windows, and thunder rolled in the distance. Damien was away again, another business trip that had stretched longer than expected. Elena sat curled on the couch, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, when a knock startled her. She opened the door to find Kai, damp from the storm, holding a bag of food. "I didn't want you to be alone tonight," he said, almost too casually. She let him in. They ate together, listening to the rain hammer the roof, their voices soft, intimate, the storm outside pulling them closer together. When the plates were cleared, they sat in silence, the flickering light from a single lamp throwing shadows across the room. Elena felt his presence beside her, the warmth of his body so near. She tried to focus on the sound of the rain, but her heart betrayed her, pounding louder with each second that passed. She knew she should ask him to leave. She knew this was the moment to draw a line. But when his hand moved slowly toward hers, large and steady, she didn't pull back. Her breath caught as his fingers wrapped around hers. The size of his hand made hers look fragile, swallowed in his grip. A tremor ran through her body, and, without realizing, she bit her lip again. The same nervous habit that had betrayed her the night before. "Elena," he whispered, her name lingering in the air like a confession. She turned her head slightly, meeting his gaze. The look in his eyes was no longer masked by politeness or restraint. It was raw, unguarded desire. She should have stopped it then. She should have ended it. But the truth was, she didn't want to. The kiss came slowly, like the inevitable breaking of a dam. His lips hovered over hers, waiting, giving her every chance to turn away. But she didn't. Instead, she leaned forward the smallest inch, and that was enough. The moment their lips touched, the world outside disappeared. The storm, the guilt, even Damien, all of it faded into the background. His mouth was warm, insistent, and the kiss deepened with every passing second. Her hands trembled, but she didn't push him away. When they finally pulled apart, her chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. Reality crashed back into the room, heavy and merciless. She pressed her hand to her lips, whispering, "I shouldn't." Her voice broke under the weight of guilt. Kai's eyes searched hers. "I know," he said softly, "but I can't pretend anymore." Her mind screamed for her to stop, to send him away, to bury this night and never speak of it again. But her heart betrayed her, drawn to the way he held her, the way he looked at her as if she was the only thing that mattered. And though every part of her knew she had crossed the line, Elena couldn't bring herself to regret it. Not fully. For the first time in years, she felt alive. The days that followed blurred together, but the weight of what Elena had done lingered like a shadow that refused to leave. Every time she glanced at herself in the mirror, she saw more than her reflection. She saw the memory of that night. The kiss, the trembling in her hands, the way she hadn't pushed Kai away. She thought the guilt would be enough to stop her. She thought that once the moment passed, the shame would smother whatever fire Kai had lit inside her. But the truth was crueler. The guilt and desire twisted together, feeding off each other until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. When Damien returned from his trip, he noticed her restlessness. He asked if she was feeling well, even placed his hand gently against her forehead as if to check for fever. Elena forced a smile, forced a laugh, forced every lie her lips had to tell just to keep her world from unraveling. She assured him she was fine. And maybe in a way, she was fine enough to fool him, but not fine enough to silence the storm inside. Kai didn't disappear. If anything, his presence only deepened. They were careful, painfully careful. No late-night embraces in the open, no reckless words spoken in front of others. But in the stolen moments, passing each other in the hallway, exchanging a glance when no one else was looking, everything roared back. Once, when Damien had gone to fetch something from the car, Kai brushed past Elena in the kitchen, his hand grazing the small of her back. The contact lasted less than a second, but it left her breathless, her body betraying her with its hunger for more. At night, Elena lay in bed beside Damien, listening to the rhythm of his breathing as he drifted to sleep. She stared at the ceiling, wide awake, wondering how she had arrived at this place. She thought of her vows, of the promises made under bright lights and soft music years ago. She thought of the woman she used to be, the woman who believed love could weather anything. And then she thought of Kai, of how alive he made her feel, of how his touch sparked a fire in her that she had thought long extinguished. The danger of discovery grew sharper with every meeting. One afternoon, Damien came home earlier than expected. Kai was there, helping her fix a shelf in the study. When Damien's footsteps echoed through the hallway, Elena's heart nearly stopped. She and Kai shared a glance, panic, fear, and a silent agreement flashing between them. Kai stepped back, hands raised in an innocent gesture, and within seconds he was nothing more than Damien's best friend again, casual and unassuming. But Elena's pulse took hours to steady. The guilt began to carve deeper wounds. She avoided her friends, avoided conversations that asked too much of her, afraid that the truth would spill out without warning. And yet, despite everything, she couldn't stop. She couldn't stop replaying the moments in her mind, couldn't stop craving the way. Kai's voice softened when he spoke her name. It all came to a breaking point one evening when Kai stayed behind after dinner. Damien had gone upstairs, exhausted from another long day. The silence stretched thin as Kai stood near the doorway, his expression conflicted. "This can't go on," he said finally, his voice low but firm. Elena froze. Her chest tightened, as if the words had wrapped chains around her. "I know," she whispered, though her voice betrayed the ache inside her. Kai stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "Then tell me to stop. Tell me you don't want this, and I'll walk away." The air was heavy, pressing down on her shoulders. This was her chance, her escape. She could end it, close the door, and return to the life she was meant to live. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Her silence was louder than any confession. Kai exhaled, a sound rough and strained. For a moment, it seemed like he might leave anyway, but then his hand reached for hers, as if a choice had already been made for both of them. Later that night, Elena stood alone in the bathroom, gripping the edge of the sink until her knuckles turned white. The mirror reflected a woman she barely recognized, a woman torn between guilt and desire, between loyalty and betrayal. She bit her lip, the familiar sting grounding her in a reality she wished she could escape. She whispered to her reflection, the words trembling on her tongue. "I didn't push him away." The house was silent around her. Damien slept upstairs, unaware of the storm unraveling just below. Elena closed her eyes, a single tear tracing down her cheek, knowing there was no undoing what had been done. The line had been crossed, and now she lived on the other side.